Hey y'all, I'm gonna do another fishing report on my this past weekend, which would be the let's see, today's the 26th, 25th, 24th, 23rd and 24th this past weekend. I fished Canyon Lake both days because I've been fishing Lake Dunlap here very recently. Almost every opportunity that I get to fish, I fish Lake Dunlap or Placid or what have you. But um, I fished, of course, on Canyon Lake, and I wanted to kind of pre-fish because there was going to be a tournament out there, and I told myself since it's been so long since I've been out there, I'll just kind of give it a shot and see what happens. But not really counting on much. Just wanted to kind of see if I could kind of get in the vicinity of some fish and just kind of connect with them. But what I realized is that it's about 5 degrees behind Lake Dunlap. Lake Dunlap's more protected and it's accessible to less wind and wave action, and it's got more sun bleached areas that stay with the sun hitting them, so it warms up a lot quicker. It's just different, Of course, it's the river system, and water moves more at the near the bridge, but when it kind of meanders out and it flattens out and everything, it's kind of a neat deal, and it gets warmer. So, and also the watercolor is a little different, and warm water or stained water warms up quicker than non-stained water. So, um, that being said, I was just like, hey, I'm gonna go out there, just kind of check it out, see what's going on, see if I can intercept any fish. And I started out fishing it just like Lake Dunlap, which right now is pretty much right there at spawn. I mean, they're spawning. It's the first major, you know, wave, I guess, for the last couple weeks. Like the last couple weeks has been the first wave like moving in, but of course, like it's around 65 whenever after the day gets like hot, it gets to 65. It's like low 60s, around 60 really, whenever it's not hot or there's no sun out, but it's there. I mean, it's happening, and the big ones are there. Definitely, absolutely. Been catching big ones there for a long time. But anyway, long story short, I fished Canyon Lake like that, thinking that it would be about the deeper areas next to the spawning areas. I focused on fishing the bushes because they spawn heavily in the bush lines, and also the heavier, like the bushes that are interior to the exterior bush line. Um, like they follow the bush line as a migratory route, like staging and different things, and then they'll position in the deepest deep of the bushes and get up in there, especially the big ones that are smarter. They get up in that real dense stuff where you can't get to them. But um, so I started out fishing it like that. Let me pull up the map real quick and kind of give you a better idea if I can find Google Earth here of exactly where I went on Canyon Lake. Google Earth. Okay. Excuse me. So we'll go to Canyon Lake, Texas. And the first day I launched out of Little Jacobs Creek, which is up in this area right here, where this little Canyon Lake Airport is, right here in this corner. And came out, I'm trying to remember exactly what I did first. I came out here. There's bush lines all through here on this area. This is like where the launch ramp is in this area over here. But there's bush lines and different things going on that I fished, like flooded bushes. But I do know for a fact that I came out and went around this corner right here and went into these four fingers, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers, I guess. And all these little points have flats associated with them with bushes, and about maybe, I don't know, like right now it's about 4 to 5 foot of water, I guess, because the water's pretty high. So those bushes are in there, maybe a little shallower depending on where it's at, but those are areas where they normally spawn is on those bush lines, like I said, and they use them to move up and down on. But right now, like I fished it just like I started out. I remember the first day that I went out there on Saturday. I started out throwing like a watermelon red, or actually it was watermelon black flake brush hog, and I had an 1/8 ounce weight, and I had it pegged, and I was just pitching it and just kind of moving, not even really like fishing in one area, but just had my trolling motor on medium and was just pitching it and just letting it go out and letting it sit. And if one would pick it up normally and swim off with it, in the spawn, they're not all about really the action. They're more about it just sitting in an area and coming by and picking it up, So um, sometimes you can use like reaction baits and get them to react to it, but majority of the time the way I like to fish is to flip it out there and let them pick it up, and then it helps me kind of check the areas while I'm moving quickly around with my trolling motor up, and so I start out fishing like that. I remember I flipped a creature bait a little bit, trying to fish it the same way that I fished Lake Dunlap, which Lake Dunlap isn't about the spawn on the bushes because they don't have bushes. Lake Dunlap's more about the spawn on the seawalls and the like the tree roots. So I was kind of using that mindset, but I was looking at the water temperature and it wasn't right. Like the water temperature was still in the 50s, and I'm like, okay, this is not right. They're still behind. They're not. It's not the same. I'm not fishing the same lake as Lake Dunlap, even though it's the same river chain. It's not. It's not the same lake. These fish are completely behind. So, anyways, fishing all those fingers kind of revealed to me, okay, they're not up shallow. I started backing off, fishing a little deeper, fishing the wood that's a little deeper than the flat, and even there, like I was thinking, okay, well maybe that's a staging area, but they just weren't there. I drove around a lot looking for during the 2 days, looking for like road beds out in front of spawning areas and stuff like that. But it gets tough because if you follow the road bed exactly on your GPS, the road bed is never exactly where it shows it on the map ever, no matter what. So the only way to really do it is to look at Google Earth and find the exact waypoint of the specific feature that you want that's on the roadbed. Because remember, they're not just going to be all over the roadbed. There's a very specific area that they're on. So I was just sitting there and I'm like, I'm wasting time doing this because I don't know exactly where the roadbed's at. I mean, like when I was looking at my side imaging, I can kind of see it in my perimeter, even though I was following the quote unquote line of the roadbed that was on the map. I wasn't on it exactly, so I couldn't really key in on the subtleties of it. So I was like, this is inefficient. I'm always trying to be more efficient. I said, this is inefficient. I need to go back home and look at Google Earth and draw the lake down with the little history thing right here on this little icon right here. I need to go back, draw the lake down to wherever, whatever date that it shows that the lake's drawn down at. So that's 2006, that's 2010, that's 13. So anyway, to find that roadbed, I thought that'd be the best idea. But nonetheless, I went up the river. I remember I went up the river one of the days, like way up here. Way up here. I went all the way back, all the way up in here. And yeah, I was all the way up in here because it forks right here. And I took one of these sloughs back up in here, and I went as far as I could look. I was looking for like clear, clean water. There was a lot of like muddy runoff and stuff. It didn't look like good quality. There was stagnation. There wasn't a lot of good health in some of those creeks, but I found one specifically way back in there where there was rocks all on the left side, and there was a lot of moss though. That's the only thing. There's a lot of like this green moss right now on Canyon Lake. It's like or algae rather. It's like algae, and it's not healthy. Something's going on. I can't remember if I saw an article on it or not, but it's like these domes of algae that are like not healthy in the water. There's something not right about it. So I figured out real quickly that wasn't the deal. Not to mention that even though that was a good spawning area back there, in the stretches that weren't like overrun with algae, it just wasn't time yet. So I remember I went back into the marina over here after I went all the way out to the river, like out of the river again, And what I started doing is, I can't remember which day this was, Saturday or Sunday, but what I started doing is, actually it was Saturday, I think. Um, I went down these tires up here and I threw like drop shots from like maybe this point right here to the bank, because I was thinking, okay, maybe like I could just work in from like the 15 foot, since this is a channel right here, maybe from like the 15 foot, and work back towards the bank and see if I get bit over there. I did the same thing over here. Also, there's a lot of rocks over here, so I fished some of these rocks that were in the water, like big chunk rock and stuff. Like if you zoom way in here, you can see that this is all big chunk rock on this bank, and it kind of changes from there to even here. This is kind of more smallish, and then this is like larger pieces, like some debris and stuff. It's just better. So I fished that, nothing. But then I got there's like these little walkways. This is a walkway, and this is a walkway. And this bank right here, I've caught fish before, and I've caught fish on this bank, but I basically, the walkway is like at a height where the boat can barely get under there. Like it's like inches. So I had to sit down on the deck of my boat, actually lay down and pull myself underneath the walkway to get back in there. And I thought, okay, not many people are fishing back in there. And that's always the best situation because there's less pressure and the fish know that. So I was like, oh my God, this is great. And the first cast that I made in there, boom, flipped in the spinning rod and I got hit. And I'm like, okay, great. I got a bite. And I actually, I don't know if like he bit it and then wrapped me up or something, but he bit it and then I went to set the hook and like broke my line off, or I don't know exactly what happened there, but that I was like, oh my God, that's the honey hole, because finally I found this place where no one goes. But then I started looking at it, and that's where all that domed algae was, like really freaking weird. Like it was all along the side of this bank from like this walkway really to all the way to the boat ramp. It's just super, super weird, and it overtakes the entire area. And it has to be from something man-made, something that we're doing. It was even on the rocks over here. So anyway, the best situation I thought was I went and like looked at some of the docks and I saw like one catfish swimming near the surface. I didn't see any minnows. Like that is dead zone in there. Avoid that area for sure. So I said, get out of there. I fished like down in here, a couple of these little points. In these little creek areas, I fished some of these main points and stuff. Maybe got a bite or so. I don't even know. It was really strange. Very, very, very strange. Normally, even if I don't fish out there for a long time and I'm trying something new, even I'm catching fish. Then I went up to, I drove way back up here again, back towards the river, but up in here, in these little two pockets right here. These are the most wind protected pockets, and they're really good spawning areas, but they weren't there yet. And this point right here, people were fishing it pretty heavily. There was like 3 boats on it, so I was like, oh, well, I'm not even gonna mess with that. And I was like, I'm gonna do my own thing and let them do their thing. So I fished at this point right here, caught a fish, and then they left eventually. I didn't go back over there, but I think the fish are staged up on the front of this point right here. That makes the most sense to me. And they're gonna eventually work their way back up by going on this side, because this is the most favorable side, considering like the shoreline cover and the topography and everything, the landscape. It's the best for them to go this way. So they're gonna be in here, but they're just not in here yet. And I've been checking it once in a while because I haven't been fishing there obviously for quite a while, but I check it periodically when I do go because I know they'll be there eventually. I went back in some of these little cuts and fished some of the bush lines. There's like, it's interesting because the bush lines kind of come out and they form points. And even though it's not a land point, it's still relatable structure. It's really cover, but it almost acts like structure the way they follow it. And it's like migratory little things that they travel on. So I checked some of those bush lines again. I didn't really fish all over the lake, mostly in the north end, but kind of what I figured out is like during the 2 days, I threw Carolina rig a little bit. I try to follow some contour lines there. Oh, there's like I know what I was gonna say. So like in this area over here, there's there's this little rocky point that a lot of people fish. This is that Five Fingers area. There's a little rocky point, and then you go back this way, and these are all like flooded bushes that come up in here and on this side. And there's like a I don't know if you can see it here, but there's like very obvious like contour here where the channel kind of comes up and touches on this edge, and like I would mark. Basically, what I was doing is I'd mark these stretches of like 100 yards, and I would say, okay, there's a good little depth break, and I know that there's bushes on this edge. Excuse me. And what I do is I would mark the start of it and the end of it, like of the stretch, and then I would mark points on either side of it and create a field, like a strip of waypoints that are like make up a region. And I would go through and I would make sure I position the boat, and I make sure because of the delay in the GPS, I make sure that as long as that boat's in that region of all those waypoints I create, like I may put in a stretch of 100 yards, I may put, I don't know how many waypoints you can even fit in there, but I put a lot. And so that makes it so that no matter what direction I'm in, no matter the delay of the boat, anything, like with the satellite reception, anything, it runs perfectly. I keep my boat on that line always. So I'll do that a lot. Like I don't even know how to really show that, except it's kind of like I do the, like, if this is the little break right here, that I'm wanting to follow, basically what I do is I just go, let me see here. I just go kind of like this, and I just put dots all over it on both sides so that when my boat's coming up through here, sometimes like the way that it's shown, your boat is shown, it shows your boat, and then it shows like a little arrow of the direction that you're headed. And so as long as that boat, because the arrow has a delay, it orients you with what direction you're headed, but it has a little bit of a delay. So as long as that boat is constantly traveling forward within this region, even though it's not super specific, I know I'm somewhere within that sweet spot, rather than having to be like exactly on that line with your cast, which will never happen. You know that if you're in that region, you have a high percentage chance of like doing that. So I do that a lot for like breaks, and then for like bush lines, I do the same thing. But like I'll just do a lot of waypoints along the bush line. Bush lines are more specific because it's more exact than a region of like a break drop off. Like the drop off, they could be on the side of it, they could be the top of it, like they could be, there's various places, ways that they get set up, and then the way that your lure swings in from different angles, depending on how the boat's oriented and the wind's blowing, you have a better chance of kind of running through them, the group, when you're kind of moving than you do with a bush line, because a bush line is very specific. It's a very specific seam that they follow, and yes, you could say that they follow the seam on the drop off, but on the drop off, how do I say this? The bushes, the drop off, the face of the drop off. Like if I let me do this. So if I have a drop off like this, the face of this is an area where they can relate to right here, along the face of this drop off. With the bushes, it's more like they're following along the top of the edge, like right here, boom, than they are here. I don't really know how to explain it. I don't know. Maybe that's completely nonsense. But what I'm trying to get at is that it seems to me like I don't create as much of a region of dots, like like what I was showing you. Is I don't do like that with the bush line. With the bush line, basically what I do is if there's like where these X's are, I just do the actual bush line itself. Is basically what I'm getting at. What I do for like a general area where there's a drop off or whatever, and this is what I do for bush lines with waypoints. Like that'll be a waypoint, that's a waypoint, that's a waypoint, that's a waypoint. But this line here is the outline of where the bushes are, and then this is so anyway. Long-winded explanation, but it makes a very super difference, and I see people do that now. Like I didn't even know that other people do that, but I had to start doing that because of the the way that the boat delays with the GPS, and I was like, how can I possibly figure out how to stay on these fish? And the other reason I had to do it is because I didn't have a graph in the front of the boat for a long time, so that I turned the boat graph around at the console, and I look at the console graph, and it was like backwards, so I'd have to turn it around in my head to make sense of it. And by doing the region thing or having dots all over, it made it easier for me that no matter if I look at it from front or back, it still keeps me in the region when the wind's blowing. It's actually a very, very smart idea that I figured out, and I had no idea that other people do it, but some of the pros I noticed started doing that, and maybe they've done it for a long time. I never even knew that they do it, but when I look at their graphs, I'm like, damn, like that. The only way that you would both arrive at the same thing, the same idea, without knowing each other or anything, is that, and organically like that, is if it was a really smart idea and it was logical. It was a logical process that your brain creates, so it's freaking legit. But little tricks like that on the GPS are the difference between like an average fisherman and someone who's at a true pro level. So that's just what it is. I mean, that's the real deal. Um, but I did that. I fished those bush lines, and like I said, it just wasn't happening. I've tried to fish even deeper bush lines, and I did catch it. Caught a fish over here in the marina. This marina. Um, Back in here where this walkway is. I just snuck back in here around this corner. Boom, got up in here and fished along this side right here. And of course, the water right here is low. It's showing the water low, but a lot of wind kind of gets dissipated on the way in here, and it calms down. Here's a little restaurant or whatever. But the wind kind of gets dissipated and it calms, and you have like a little calm pocket here. But there's like a little deep. There's a deep little cut that runs here, like through, kind of like a little ditch. Really, it's not really a true ditch because this is kind of the flat more than this is, but it's like a ditch because you have the border of this walkway and this dock area that divides it from the bank. So that's a relatable piece of structure, basically. You can call it cover or whatever, but it's like a relatable piece of structure that they follow in, and they're using the bank and that edge to orient themselves, and then it's deep here in the center. So it's almost like a ditch, but it's not really. But there's deeper bushes. So what I did is I came in here and I started casting on the bank and dragging it on the bushes, and I was actually like flipping like a speed worm, a zoom speed worm in green pumpkin. I was flipping in there, boom, 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 and then I started casting. Gradually, I started fan casting, out into this deeper, and I would fan cast to the point where, okay, I'm still making contact with the brush. If I got to the point where I wasn't making contact, I would change the angle again and make sure I was right on the edge, always touching the cover, because that's what the fish relate to. And plus, I want that bait to bump off of the cover. So I was throwing out. So I noticed, like, I can't remember what I was like. I was reeling my bait and I had one follow it in a different area on the lake. And so I came in here with the idea that, okay, maybe just the way that everything's set up, they're not super active, so I don't think they're gonna hit like a crankbait or like a spinner bait. But there was a little wind, but it was still high sun and kind of less clouds, so it was kind of in that intermediate area where you can get away with throwing more of like a swim jig or swimming a worm, which is something a lot of people do when it's like kind of in between, like difficult and like in between the times when the fish have a wide strike zone and a small strike zone, when you can get away with that. So I threw out that speed worm, boom, got on the bush, and I had a really light weight on it, and I cranked it slow enough to where it just kind of kept fluttering, and I also cranked it fast enough though to where that tail doesn't stop moving, but I just kind of cranked it barely to just keep it in contact with the top of that bush so that it just kind of like hits it and bumps, and I was just casting out in the middle, fan casting, trying to make contact with these bushes right here on the side and on the side of the bank, and also in the center right here, back where this kind of darker brown walkway is. And I threw it out there, boom, just barely walk it, barely, 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 and then boom, caught one. And excuse me, I that was the difference. Is like I used to have that kind of that like little bit of a like a sixth sense whenever I was fishing like every day, is that I knew to make those adjustments, you know. It's so hard when you're not all there all the time to like really know, but you become kind of tuned into the environment and you can feel when it's not good. You just have that understand, you just know. You can kind of hear the wildlife, you can kind of look around, see if things are moving, if they're not moving, if the wind's blowing, whatever. You can see if things are active. You can just feel it. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like this thing that you kind of pick up on the more you're out there. And I lost that for a long time, and now that I've been fishing a lot more lately and getting involved, it's like it's coming back, and it's coming back with a vengeance. So I'm so happy about it. But yeah, swimming that worm, that seemed to work, and just like little adjustments like that. But Canyon Lake right now is hard for me to like figure out. You know, it's like I want to go out there and just smash them and just catch big ones, you know, like when they're full blown spawning, I can go up in these pockets and these protected areas and just freaking wreck them, and catch big ones, you know. Even with as much pressure there is, I know what to do to get, you know, farther back in them bushes and just to those fish that are buried, those big, you know, trophies. But they're not doing it yet, and they're not at all, you know, where they are on Lake Dunlap. And I just learned a lot from the experience this weekend. Um, it kind of just made me even keel and, you know, um, kind of understand things a little bit better. So, you know, I know I didn't go over all these regions in detail, but basically the takeaway, I guess, is that I've been focusing on areas that where there's bushes, but trying to find areas where the bushes are near deeper water, um, and trying to think about them setting up for spawning, like where they're going to be. They're going to be close to where they're spawning. They're not going to swim across the entire lake to go spawn. Um, so they're set up in those areas, like staging kind of, but they're definitely not in 2 3 foot of water. They're like in 7 foot of water, I think. You know, like seven, even like maybe 12, like just kind of in that range where it's like deep enough to where they have access to like safety and protection from the elements and everything, and it's still that little warmer water, you know. And I think they're still oriented kind of a little lower. I don't think they really get oriented and looking up until like looking up to feed until like after everything spawns and everything's swimming like in clouds. I think that's when they start looking up. Um, but um, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I hope that's super helpful. I know, like I said, like I always say, if someone had done this for me, then man, I, you know. But the only way to really make it kind of stick is to go out there and practice it and gain confidence and stuff. You know, um, caught one on a Carolina rig on one of the points that I showed you guys. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was fishing one of the main lake points through the Carolina rig out there, and then I was just inching it to the side until I got another bite, and just kind of following the fish, you know, like just following them and just seeing where they bite, where they don't bite, and just tracing that pattern. But like I said, man, super critical. Um, I'm excited. I got like a little tournament this weekend that I'm gonna fish with my buddy, and uh, you know, it's all good. So just I would probably recommend watching all of these several times. I don't think watching them one time is going to really super help. I think the more that you watch it and the more you keep rehearsing it in your mind, and when you're sleeping thinking about it, when you're, you know, when you first wake up thinking about it, and just constant immersion. If you're 100% immersed all the time in it, then you pick up a lot quicker than you would if you're just kind of once in a while thinking about it. But anyway, I'm so glad I could share the information, and I'm honored to do so, and hope it helps you out. So, thank you so much for checking in, and you know, we'll see you soon.